We are getting close to the 1 year anniversary of when the WHO first declared the pandemic and when, well, my life was impacted by it. So I thought I'd show a slideshow of all the highs and lows that I've been through during the pandemic. So on I think it was March 19th of 2020 is when most of the public venues in the Seattle area where I was living closed down. And this is a cafeteria in a grocery store that I used to hang out in a lot. You gotta understand, I used to live out of my car, and I would go there to handle any remote work that I had to do, which was not a whole lot compared to now, right? And I would mingle with people, try to network with the right people. So it was good. There's nothing wrong with it, except that they closed because of COVID-19. And I think they are still closed. Even though Seattle has technically allowed them to open, we're in phase 2. They got a social distance, obviously. But that was pretty sad because I spent a lot of time hanging out there. But as soon as I left that cafeteria, I went to my favorite, there's a boat launch near that area and clear skies, and I remember thinking, oh my god, the skies still work. I love to view lunar phases, I love to view planets in the sky, and the lockdown actually gave me a lot of ammunition for my New Year's resolution of 2020, which was to normalize my relationship with food. I used to have out of control eating, to the point that it was affecting my social life, my professional life, and I wasn't overweight or anything. And some people think that's a blessing. I think it's a curse, because that's what allowed me to continue doing it to the detriment of my social life. And so over the next few months, when we were really in the phase 1 of the lockdown, I used that as an opportunity to isolate myself from all the social pressures to eat, right? I could focus on eating and not worry about social interaction. So, to help pass the time, I made a lot of art. This is an art piece I made of a Monopoly board showing the COVID-19 situation. I have the countries that are most affected, obviously. The emergency room, obviously. Quarantining and losing your turn. Amazon and Clorox are doing pretty well, right? Go to emergency, drive-through COVID-19 testing, collecting a stimulus, and if you have to pay an income tax, you get an extension and you pay 10% on your next turn. Right? We had a protest in Seattle, in Capitol Hill, where protesters took over, I think it was about 6 blocks of Seattle. It's called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And so I went there for just a few hours one day. And what was really nice was that I realized that when I was fasting, I could handle going to loud social environments like that. In the past, I had difficulty with environments like that. And it was around the time of that Chaz protest that I really started to become addicted to fasting. You know, it's kind of funny. I'm pretty good at fasting. I'm pretty good at feasting. I'm not so good at the in-betweens, though. And so I find that if I fast every other day, at least that puts me in the ballpark of about what I should eat. And so that's what I've been doing over the last year and a half, I guess. I hope to change that because obviously that presents other challenges. Although it's a lot healthier than what I used to do, it still presents its own set of challenges. And then I moved out of the Redmond area, and what was really nice about that, these are 2 different apartments I lived in. This one's in Wallace, Idaho. This one's in Missoula, Montana. And for less than what I was paying, half of what I was paying in Redmond, I can rent out my own unit and have more room to social distance, and then have more money to interact with, to go to social events, right? So I could have the best of both worlds, right? And potentially meet the right person in my life. I need to meet somebody to start a business one day, right? So interactions are very nice, obviously, with precautions, right? This is in Missoula, where I took a lot of long-distance walks along the trails. Now, what I really, really love about the intermittent fasting and taking control of my eating is that I spend a lot less money on food. A lot less. I mean, I obviously don't collect food stamps anymore, but if I were collecting food stamps today, I could live on that food stamps money. I actually did a budget one time to see, and I couldn't say that about a few years ago. Anyway, so that I saved a lot of money on food, which has enabled me to go out and find myself, and lately I've taken up bowling. When I started bowling, I was scoring in the 80s and 90s. And I can't remember the last time I saw a 2-digit score. And I mean, sometimes at the very end of a long night of bowling, yeah, maybe a game or two of a 2-digit score. But this is the first time I ever scored 150. I actually scored it just a few days before New Year's Day, because it was my goal to get 150 just before the new year, and I made it. I think just 3 days, with 3 days left, I made it. Got really lucky though. Usually a typical game I'll get 2 or 3 strikes. How many strikes did I get there? 4 of them that time. Not common for me to get that many. Usually I'm lucky if I get 3. I've only seen the turkey on the screen twice, and I got really lucky. This was in Wallace, Idaho. I was getting ready to view a lunar eclipse, and that's the moon up there with all the holiday decorations. And I think I had like a 2 or 3 second exposure, because you can see some of the stars in the sky. I think this was back. Oh, this was when I was in Helena, Montana. I lived there for a month, and this was when we tried to reopen. Obviously, we had another setback in the fall. All customers and employees now required to wear masks while in Starbucks. We're all on the ship together, even if it feels like the Titanic sometimes. Hand sanitizer up there. I like Helena a lot better than Seattle. I think in Seattle, people are very cold. They just want to get stuff done. There's very little human. I got in a little trouble taking pictures one time. I was trying to take pictures of historical COVID lockdown measures, right? Please practice social distancing, right? Masks required. I was trying to take pictures of that. And one of the employees just told me outright that I'm not allowed to take pictures there, which is fine. But he said it in a very cold way. I wish there was more interaction. I guess the social distancing doesn't help there. But even in times past, people are just very cold. Get out. You can't do this, right? Or whatever, right? Yes, I understand there are rules, but there are good and bad ways to enforce the rules. In Helena, I've gotten into similar situations, but it's much warmer, right? One time, actually, to give you an idea of how bad it is in Seattle, I was at another. This was just outside of SeaTac Airport, actually. I was taking pictures of the sky. I clearly had my camera pointed in the skyward direction. And airport security comes to say, "Hey, no pictures here." And I show him that it's the sky, and he still gets very defensive about that. Had he just talked to me, "Hey, is your flight coming up? What are you doing here? Waiting for somebody?" "Oh, I'm taking pictures of Mars and Jupiter." It could have been handled a lot more warmly. In Helena, I've run into situations like that. Obviously, I can't even remember them because they happen in a very warm way, right? That's why aside from the cost of living, that's why I have relocated to the countryside. And then I went home for a couple weeks for some meetings and obviously to go vote. This was in Bellevue, Washington. I voted for the Independent Party, so I didn't have to participate in who was worse, right? And then here's a Christmas tree in Redmond, Washington, where we were starting to slide back into phase 2. And then a few days after that, people started to panic, hoard toilet paper. This was in Redmond, Washington. So I got over my eating disorder problem. And I had gotten very impatient with one of my students. I'm a professor. And so just before Thanksgiving, I wrote him a thank you email. You had me for operating systems in the fall. If I recall, you did well, and I hope you have been able to make good use of the material in your career or future studies. I want to say there's a footnote to the semester. You see, one day when you came over to the campus, I was in the middle of eating and very anxious to finish working with you to get back to my food. As a result, it wasn't my finest performance. I appreciate you wound up sticking with the course despite the experience. I'm very sorry for what happened that evening. I want to say the experience, among others, made me wake up to my binge and compulsive eating problems, which I have spent the better part of the year correcting, and I have lost 7 pounds and normalized my blood pressure considerably. My blood pressure used to be in the 140s to over 100s. What's really funny is that now that we can't use the blood pressure machines at the grocery store and I don't measure them so much, I used to measure them so much that they would give me anxiety and raise my blood pressure even more, so that might have helped too. Let's get through all of our challenges of our time and come out stronger on the other end. Yours truly, November 11th, 2020. And I really mean it. I mean, sometimes I still think about that experience and how, he was very demanding, but at the same time, I gained something out of it, right? We all have to think positively sometimes. This was in Ellensburg, where I went to view the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn comes into conjunction every 20 years. And there's a very nice vantage point in Ellensburg that I love to go to view the night sky. I actually discovered that vantage point quite by mistake. I had gotten into a heated argument with a girlfriend, and I stormed away, and I somehow ended up in Vantage, Washington, where there's a cliff and then there's a nice place to view the night sky. Last Valentine's Day, I spoke up for singles. That's my bowling score up there, by the way. I scored a 160 that day. Anyway, so it's been a year. I had a year of good experiences. They were different, but I really enjoyed them and I got a lot out of them. I hope the pandemic will end soon, but whatever time I have left, I want to make the best use of it so that I can come out of the other side even stronger and prepared to deal with the new challenges on the other side of COVID-19, right? Thanks for watching.